Well, since we're all here and it's not open to the public, we'll call this meeting to order, the Escondido Library Board of Trustees meeting. Everyone is present. It should be noted that John Schwab is teleconferencing. Our first item is approval of the minutes of March 12th. It should be noted that we didn't have a meeting in April due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So all of you were, Dara sent the minutes to all of you. Are there any additions or corrections? Otherwise, we need a motion.
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Cameron and second by Clemens. All those in favor, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes for John Schwab.
Okay. Current business statistical reports COVID-19.
It's easier to sit here. Okay, so just so you are aware, the statistics have been supplied in this packet, I believe, for both March and April, so that you can take a look at kind of some of the differences that we have. Looks like the March ones, so maybe the April ones didn't make it in. Really, the main thing I wanted to talk about is you'll obviously see a drop off in physical visits. You will see a drop off in the Wi-Fi usage, because for the month of March and then for the month of April, we did have the public Wi-Fi turned off. So we only had staff using it, so I didn't report it. What you're really going to see that is different is our programming numbers, because we went to all virtual programs. So March is going to be a combination of the very few we held in the beginning that were in person, and then our virtual programs. The state of California, the state library, has put out notice that they only want us to count for the digital programming live views. So the number of people who are viewing a program when it is live recorded. So for Facebook, that's very easy to do, and for Instagram as well, because they provide those metrics to us. However, YouTube is the only one that's kind of a snag, because you cannot live record in YouTube. You can only post a pre-recorded video. We only have, I believe, our adult crafting program and maybe some of our art demos that are uploaded specifically to YouTube. And so what we're doing is we're working on a way to set the metrics. So we'll count the live views, that's in quotation, as like a certain time period. It'll probably be a week. So we're still working on developing that in conjunction with the state library. But just so you're aware, when you see, I believe, for adult programs, we had 8 programs and we had 689 attendance for March. That seems pretty high. That's because more people attended our live videos, because I think more people can obviously access that than who would physically come into the building. So you're going to see actually an increase in some of our attendance numbers, because we are finding that our virtual programs are very, very popular, and we actually have quite a few live views. So I just wanted to let you know that's how that's being counted, and we are still working on kind of figuring more of the platforms out, because we have 4 different platforms we're using. Did anyone have any questions?
Katie, what are the platforms?
Okay, so our virtual programs are mainly recorded live on Facebook via the Facebook Live video, and also on Instagram Live video, because they're kind of linked. They're both owned by the same company, and so I believe we can live stream both at the same time through one portal. The only other video portal that we're using currently is YouTube. And like I said before, YouTube is the only one that gives us a little bit of grief, because you can't live record on YouTube. You can only post a pre-recorded video. So we are posting pre-recorded videos on YouTube at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Katie? Thank you, Katie. Our next item is the Library Board of Trustees update on metric development, and that was Carolyn and John.
Okay, Carolyn, you want me to go first?
I don't have anything, John, so it's all you today.
Okay. First, Zach, if you can put up what we had for March, the goals and process, the one page.
Appears as though his audio might have gotten cut off. John, can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you see the screen?
No. I have it up on my laptop. I don't
Oh,
have a
okay.
screen.
Got it. So, members, can you see us on the screen? I'm just not going to go full screen, though, just because it appears that cut off his audio. So, all right, John, so I have it right here where it says Library Metrics Research Update.
No, the first one, improved library metrics, just the
Okay.
one-pager
That is up
for
right
March.
now.
Let me know when you got that up.
Okay, it's up right now.
Okay. All right. So this was where we, the plan as of early March, when our meeting then, there was another spreadsheet where I had various libraries and what statistics they used and other things in their monthly reporting. I do not have that updated. I have some information to add to it. I got a very extensive read from that came from the San Diego County Library, courtesy of Brenda Townsend. And if Brenda's there, thank you. That was something she got from somebody at the county library system. And that and a couple others will be incorporated in next month's meeting. For metrics, we had that report from Jennifer Giltrop of LS&S, and I had assumed that all the libraries, there are like 30 of them, whose population, the city they were in, their population varied from like 140 to 170, 140 to 170,000, and they had few or no branches, so they were, quite similar to ourselves. So I started calling them. This was, I think, early the week of the big shutdown, and in mid-March, or early to mid-March. And I found out very quickly that they are not all LS&S libraries. Many of them had never heard of LS&S, and many of them were also not Polaris. But it was a pretty good cross-section. I got some good information from two of them, and we'll cover that in a little bit. And I also went into some depth on the Library IQ webinar that had, well, I'll cover it when we get to the next one. Okay, Zach, can you put up the other two-pager, the one for this month?
Yes.
Okay, let me get that up. No. Okay, give me a second. I gotta find mine. Okay, as I said, I was able to contact 12 of the libraries, and I was taking my time doing this, and I should have gone quicker because by the end of the week, everybody was shutting down. And by the following week, it was almost impossible to get a hold of anybody live or have them even respond by email, other than to say, hey, we're closed, talk to you later. The two libraries I were able to get a hold of and had some really extensive conversations with was with Nathaniel Washburn, who runs the Peoria, Arizona Public Library. They've been on Polaris since 2002, and he had a person who was on vacation that week who was going to call me back, and we were going to go over what they used and find out what he thought of what we were trying to do and what recommendations he could give us. That never happened with the big shutdown, so I'm still waiting to have that call with a gentleman named Aaron at Peoria, Arizona's Public Library. The other one, the Clinton Macomb, Larry Neal is the director of the library, and he has a connection. He has relatives in Escondido. He has an aunt who lives there, and so he knew the city. So that helped getting a little bit of a connection going there. And he had to show off a little bit. Clinton Macomb is not that big of a township. Their collection budget, hold on to your seat there, is $1.4 million a year versus our $250,000. I mean, it's just huge. We could replace every book in the library every year, probably, if we had that kind of money. I suspect that it's a small town, 60 or 80 miles north of Detroit, and I'm guessing they have either a hell of a big well-to-do community or a couple of real wealthy patrons who are able to help their funding, but they do quite well. Neither of those libraries is LS&S. He looks at a couple of things, and I told him what I was trying to do, and I'll cover that on the next page. What I'm seeing to do something simply is I'm looking basically for a canary in the coal mine, and I want to focus on aging and causes of holds. Because if your library is not managed correctly, if your collection is not good, if you're not responding quickly to problems with your collection, not having the books that the people want, if you have problems in your shelf, reshelving of the books, restocking of the books on the shelf, or your follow-up of your patrons to get overdues in, if you're not doing that well, it's going to show up in your holds, as will other things. So I want to look at simple measurements that can be taken off Polaris where we can do just that. And this probably wouldn't be something that we would look at every month, because you want to look at changes that represent at least one standard deviation from the mean or further. Because you do have variation throughout the year, and you don't want to go off the deep end just because you had a variation for a month or two. But this is the kind of thing I'm looking at, and I want to run this one to ground once the other libraries open back up, and I get some more information and come back and present to the board what looks like it might work, or if this is just a fool's errand and I need to go somewhere else. Larry Neal had a couple different things that they do that might be useful, but they're not totally quantifiable, and that's what we want. In the library IQ thing, that process, which we've had now for a couple months, but they've been a rather chaotic couple months. I doubt a staff has had a whole lot of time to look into it. But they have in a webinar presentation on that site, the Library IQ, they have a relative use analysis chart, and they look at collection and circulation metrics. And I will cover that in depth next meeting, once I have a chance to talk to somebody, I want to talk to staff and to other libraries about what they think of that. It's relatively simple to do. You take your categories in your collection, and the one that they used as a demo, it followed kind of like Pareto, where they had 15 collection items, and that covered 90% of their circulation. And they went through and looked at what the circulation level was in the various categories of the collection. And without showing you the chart, which I can't do, this might be something really meaningful that we could do maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, but I'm thinking once, to see how our collection plan from the previous year is panning out, how our circulation overall in the various categories is either improving or not, or being or the same in the various categories, and would potentially be useful for defining and approving the next year's collection plan, and helping tweak it and seeing the weaknesses in it. And that's pretty much it. Other than that particular thing, which since LS&S, I don't know if they created it, but they're the ones that seem to know the most about it. I'm going to have a lot more information on that next meeting. The other stuff on holds and all that, that's all going to be dependent on who I can get a hold of at other libraries, and discuss what Polaris is capable of providing. Any questions?
Does anybody have a question for John? John, they don't have questions, but we want to thank you for the work that you've done on this. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's fun doing this.
Well, we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say next meeting.
Yeah, if I were like Carolyn and doing 5 people's jobs, I couldn't do this.
All right. Okay, our next item is Library COVID-19 reopening recommendations.
Okay, it's kind of a joint item, so that's why. The library did close on March 16th, as you're aware, and there's a lot of variables in the reopening plan, because at this point we don't know exactly what being reopened is going to look like. So we've created phases. So they're somewhat broad, and it is a general overview of what we would like to do, but it at least keeps us on task and keeping as prepared as we can as there are changes and developments and we're moving into another phase. Do you want to speak to the...
Yeah, so we're really just seeking your input on this draft plan, and also kind of looking forward into the next fiscal year. I wanted to give you guys an update. The council did meet last night to review the preliminary operating budget and capital improvement program budget for next fiscal year. And they did direct staff to move forward with the staff recommendation, which was to use one-time monies to cover the $4 million budget gap. So we, as city departments, we made on average about 8% cuts to each of our budgets. And with doing that, we were able to balance the budget, but that was pre-COVID. So now with the loss of revenue because of COVID, we anticipate having a $4 million budget gap, but we have identified some one-time monies that can be used to close that gap. So that's really good news. Obviously, council will have one more opportunity June 10th, which is when the final budget will come back to them to, make changes or direct staff to do something different. But based on the conversation last night, we anticipate that direction will stay the same. But we do need your feedback, because even though the funding status for next year is good news, The fact, because of county orders, we are likely not going to be able to open the public to our normal level of service or our pre-COVID level of service in the near future. So that's reflected in this reopening phased plan. Obviously now we have, scaled back staffing, scaled back hours, a real shift to virtual service. The next phase will be the rollout of curbside service. And then the third phase would be probably limited admission to the library, metered access, social distancing, all the things you're hearing about in businesses and things like that. So our ability to get back to our pre-COVID level is really determined by the county, by the climate, not the weather, but like the, political climate that we're in right now and the direction that we're able to move forward with. So we are seeking your direction and kind of your general insights as you represent the community about service priorities, because we are going to have to make some trade-offs. So, if you've had a chance to look at this, we want to give you time to provide your feedback. And moving forward, we would love to hear from you if you have certain things that you feel the community really needs in this time above and beyond what the library is already doing. Obviously, we'll have to take that under consideration because some of your great ideas may not be feasible under county orders, and some of those things may not be contractually possible. So with those caveats, we are open to your feedback.
Okay, Joanna, this is John Schwab. I've got some questions and suggestions under the details on the outline, and I can go through those if you'd like. Yes. I had my daughter has a master's in public health nursing. She works for the Kaiser in their health education department. And I also had Tina Pope, who is Director of Inpatient Experience for Neighborhood Health in Escondido, take a look at this. So most of what's in here is their observations. The first one, the third item down, determine secure personal, the PPE to be worn. They both say mask and gloves for any patrons coming into the library or any patrons picking up holds, the curbside service. The next one, the sneeze guards, their opinion was that the sneeze guards should be mandatory if we go to stage 3, the way it's written here. Removing the computers, I think this is not necessary if you just take away the keyboards or put big X's on them just so they can't use them. I think that would do the work versus just taking the computer out of the area, which requires.
Yeah, that's not
effort.
a physical removal. It says removal from the reservation software. So they're not reservable, but they're physically still on the desks.
Okay, and the removed furniture, same thing. I went to the doctor, and the waiting room had had 2 X's between. If you had 4 seats, there were 2 X's for the seats in between. So they didn't remove anything. They made the furniture unusable by marking it off or putting paper over it or something, versus physically taking the furniture out of the room. So that's a thought. For curbside pickup, this is my suggestion, not theirs. Until we get a handle on it and understand how the patrons are reacting to it, it might be a good idea to have a park ranger on hand. And if it turns out it's not needed, okay, it's not needed. But just to make sure things go smoothly, just that little extra caution, at least at the beginning. 2, I've been doing a lot of curbside pickup myself at Lowe's, and theirs works really well. You drive up, you call a number, tell them who you are, and they bring your stuff out. They will not put it in your car. You can either come out and get it out of the cart, or they will let you reach out the window and grab it and take it in. I really didn't understand the put holes in place on shelf, do not trap. I'm just not familiar with that.
It's a library term. It just references how the software works and how the process is fulfilled and checked out. So staff wouldn't be checking out the material until the pickup time is confirmed and the person's actually there to receive it. It's more internal for the library staff.
On the next page, once again, consider having a ranger outside for the curbside pickup at least, until you're happy that things are working smoothly enough. You don't think it's necessary, you don't think it's necessary. Okay, down to partial open. Fourth item, clean computers. This is primarily from Neighborhood Health, and they obviously have the type of people that are more capable of doing this. It's not part of their, the library staff, this isn't their normal thing. They're saying clean furniture, computers, especially keyboards and mouses, after each use. And door handles and counters, there should be a specified time interval everybody's happy with. Versus, it's often it's just too vague. Taking temperatures, that was considered mandatory. And what Neighborhood Health does for the restrooms, they lock them, and the sign says go to the desk and get the key, and only one patron at a time is allowed in the restroom. And they go in and clean after each use. I don't know if that's even feasible with us, but that's what they do. It sounds like a great idea. I just don't know cost-wise if that is doable. And I think their restrooms are just one toilet, one sink. And ours, if we wanted to do this type of thing, we might want to just block off everything but one toilet, one sink, to make life a little easier rather than guessing which one somebody used. That was it.
John, can you hear me, John? This is Elmer.
Hi, Elmer.
Hi. Clarification. I think you mentioned a few moments ago neighborhood health. I think you referenced your daughter.
No, my daughter works for Kaiser up in Los Angeles. Tina Pope at Neighborhood Health.
What'd you say?
Tina
Pope, Neighborhood Health, the director of inpatient
yes.
services, whatever. She was the one that read it and gave me some comment.
Oh, okay, thank you. Tina Pope.
Tina Pope, yes.
Yeah.
I have some questions. They're not as specific as John's. As we start doing this, we're going to be able to refer to the fact that we followed California guidelines, San Diego County guidelines, City of Escondido guidelines. And do we need to take this, Joanne, to the council, this plan? So we can give support to Dara, but I will feel very comfortable as long as we are doing what these experts tell us rather than us making up kind of, I don't like to use that word making up, but coming up with our own plan. I just like to have that kind of as background in case someone says, well, how did you guys decide to do this? Well, we decided because we're following these guidelines, and so that's important to me.
Yeah, the county has established protocol templates for various industries. We had to do it for the parks. We're doing it for our other facilities. So Dara has completed one of those for the library. We actually already had to complete one, and there is one posted at all of our city facilities that covers these types of health and sanitation. It's called the sanitation and social distancing protocol. So I guess we're not really looking so much for your direction on the health measures because that's really established. I mean, there's, like you said, Ron, there's nothing you guys are going to tell us that the county is not going to tell us to do. It's more really about service levels and prioritization of service levels. That would be really helpful to us to hear from you as a representation of the community. What, if we have to make these tough calls about, well, you know, we have to scale back the contract because we're not able to implement a full 100% complement of services, what are the areas that you guys want us to prioritize?
Well, Katie mentioned that virtual attendance on a lot of the programs was better than the previous physical attendance. Maybe areas where we can encourage people to use online services and website capabilities versus, you know, walking into the library and talking to somebody behind the desk. This might be a great opportunity to expand that.
And we have also, in addition to going online for programming, we've reallocated our physical item funds to go to e-materials. So we now have Hoopla. We just added Cloud Library, or it will be available to everyone on Monday. So we've also upped our purchases in Overdrive. So that materials fund is just being reallocated for the things that people can access at this time. And we are evaluating some other possibilities because many of these virtual offerings are offering discounts right now and trials. The only hesitation with that, of course, is offering so much that you might have to take away for financial reasons later. But definitely right now we're doing as much as we can to be available and have titles for the school requirements and curriculum online, as well as reading material for enjoyment.
Is the video that you guys are talking about in phase 2 for publishing that for the public for on-site curbside pickup, is that the video that we're going to develop, or is it a video that we're purchasing, or is it a YouTube, or what is it?
It's a video we'll create that it's just instructional. So with curbside being new to a lot of people, and it's just slightly unique from place to place, it'll be a video of how we are going to provide the service of curbside pickup. And it will let people know, you know, what they need to do and what they can expect in the process.
One of the things
I think what you guys are, Dara, what you've done on e-materials is great. Is there anything more that we need to do to try to educate the patrons of what's available? Let's assume that we don't get to phase 3 for, you know, months. What can we do to help teach people? Or you probably will tell me what you've already done, and you're way on top of it. But I'm just thinking about, you know, people who haven't gotten an ebook before that, you know, always could but never bothered. And now is the time. Is there any educational, making them aware of it, and then also potentially short little how-tos on to set it up and download?
Yes, so once we closed, we increased our e-newsletter from going out once a month to every 2 weeks, trying to find a balance with not overloading people, but being able to share all of the resources that we're adding. And part of that is sharing we did not create our own tutorial, but sharing the tutorial that was through Hoopla on how to download and how to stream. We've also had an open reference service, so people can text us, email us, or call us, and we've had people assigned to shifts to answer those questions. So we've definitely done a lot of coaching over the phone, and that's very successful. So we'll continue to tell people with newsletters, our website, our social media, that we do have these new resources available. It seems like we keep reposting them over and over, but you never know who's going to see it next time. So it's an ongoing process to try and make sure people know that we have it.
Okay, that all sounds great. Glad to hear that that you guys are ahead of the curve on this.
One of the things that we'd like to get some direction from you guys about are the curbside hours. So in terms of, again, sort of representing the needs of the community, how would you ideally like to see that sort of allocated? So right now, under the current existing scaled back contract, the library staff are operating within the facility 45 and a half hours out of the original contracted level of 60. And that's 7 days a week. So bearing that in mind, and likely we will kick that number up again, right, in the next fiscal year. But how do you envision, if curbside is the one means of getting physical materials to people, what do you envision would serve the public best? Some sort of split availability, front loading that during the week, having it sort of equally spaced 7 days a week. Again, we'll have to go back and talk to Dara about staff availability and work with LS&S on that, but we'd like to hear your thoughts and direction on that.
So I think one of the things I think about a lot is the impact this has had on families, specifically with kids in school. A lot of people are working from home, and it's been like a big struggle to get their work done while trying to educate their children. So I think related to opening curbside hours, I would like to see blocked time frames, so a morning block and an afternoon block, and then maybe like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So making it so that, if you get some materials on Monday and you're ready by Friday to get new materials, then there's more of a service available to them to do so, instead of kind of just, doing Monday through Friday and then that's it.
Okay, Dara, do you have any statistics on which days of the week materials are most often taken out or returned?
No, at this point, when we were planning for this, we were kind of planning within the hours, the 45 hours that we've had people devoted to being available for library services, which is 1 to 5 on Saturday, Sunday, and really just reflective of our reference hours. And then our thought was within those hours, when people are coming in for pickup, we'll have a designated line for them to call in on, and then they'll call that number and let us know that they're there. We'll take their materials out, place them on a table, and they will pick them up. That just eliminates some places for touching. Originally, we thought, well, we'll try and put it in their trunks or whatnot. We thought it might make more sense, and we'll run this by talking through some of the procedures, but that way we have this one table that we have to wipe down every time somebody does a pickup. It just eliminates our potential interaction with surfaces. But as far as the time, we were really just thinking within the times that we have staff available, based on the updated contract, people could just come in and call us upon arrival.
So Dara,
Yeah, that
that's
makes sense.
1 to 5.
1 to 5 on, well, actually it would be 1 to 4:30, because we'd want to cut off that last half hour if possible for pickups, just so we have a chance to wipe everything down, fold the table down, bring it back in. But yes, 1 to 4:30 on Saturday and Sunday, and then it would be 9:30 to 4:30 on Monday through Friday. These are just the hours we were thinking, because they're the hours that we're there at the building. We've been leaving at 5, and that gives us kind of a half hour to, deconstruct our outdoor workstation.
Do any of you board members feel that you'd like to adjust those hours, or the ones that Dara just gave us, do you think that's appropriate?
I believe that your suggestion is actually great to have those, and especially when the patrons can call in when they're ready for pickup. So I think that would work.
Yeah, as do I. If patrons have a particular problem, you know, like I can only be there at 7 p.m. or something, or I can't remember when we close. Is it 7 normally?
Normally.
Normally, yes,
Yeah.
we would be open till 7.
Unless there are enough people that require something outside those hours, which I kind of doubt there won't be. I think that's great. What you proposed. I mean, most of the time staff will be doing what they're doing, and if somebody calls and said, "I want to pick something up," whoever's designated will go do that. And if you get a run on them, then somebody else can help them. It sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
Elmer?
I revert to my many years ago military experiences. I'm thinking of once a plan is agreed to, this is a good plan, so many hours, you know, checking out, doing certain things like that. Is there any room for mid-course adjustment that you should make without having to come back and get some sort of approval of that movement? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we only meet once a month. There may be some realities that you face that you weren't able to anticipate, and neither were we, that suggest to you that, hey, we've been doing this, but it's not getting anything done. We'd like to make some changes. So how much flexibility will you be able to have to do that kind of thing? Because that's a reality. You're coming up with a plan. It sounds good, but who knows? When you start operating, using that plan, you find out, my goodness, that is not producing what we thought it would do. We ought to be using our time for doing it a different way.
We're all trying to talk.
Did we all try to talk?
I was just going to say, I think that if you give that direction, that you are providing flexibility to the staff to change course and adapt to the statistics, the feedback, the circumstances that they're facing, then that's enough from my perspective. And then we would simply work together and with the LS&S corporate team to make those adjustments. I envision this will probably roll out June timeframe. So maybe for the month of June, we do it under these hours with the plan as we've laid out. We evaluate it for a month. I imagine this phase is going to continue for a couple of months. So maybe beginning of the next fiscal year, we reevaluate and we say, are these hours still working? Do we need evening hours? Because at that point, we'll have the funding again to bump those hours up. So we might be able to expand the hours of this to have it these, you know, available these 45 hours plus some evening hours or something like that, whatever we determine is needed. So I think we have enough from your dialogue that that's enough flexibility for us to be able to adapt that way.
And I do think
Sounds
far,
good. I don't think I have any problem at all with if giving Joanna and Dara the flexibility they need to provide good service. And if they need to change the hours, they can change them, and they can let us know what that is.
I think that's wonderful to hear, because from my perspective so far with pandemic planning, it changes at a whiplash sort of speed. So that will give us a chance, because we're not really sure what to anticipate in the first month. Are people going to be concerned about coming out? Are they going to come out in droves? Is there going to be a demand for those evening hours? So it would be really nice to have that flexibility. So thank you for that.
And just one last comment that I wanted to make about future fiscal year fundings. It's really good news what Direction Council gave last night regarding library services. But the mayor kind of reiterated in the conversation around the operating budget that this is not sustainable. This use of one-time monies to close this gap. I mean, the city departments already cut budgets on average 8%. Some departments much deeper than 8% to get to a balanced budget. And then we had COVID, and now we have a gap again. And that is not sustainable for us moving forward. So we've gotten lucky one more time, and we've been able to close that gap one more time for one more fiscal year. But the conversation and the dialogue and the education around a sales tax revenue measure continues from the perspective of city staff and the council. And so that's definitely something that we're going to keep you apprised of. And it's very important that, you know, you be educated on that, because you are representatives of the city and you are the conduits with the community. And so if you are fielding questions about that, it's very important that you feel well educated on the facts around the necessity of a sales tax measure, what that money would be used for, how that would benefit and sustain essential city services moving forward. So if I likely will ask the assistant city manager to come and do a presentation for you, likely at a very upcoming meeting, because I think it's really important that you guys have all of that education and tools at your disposal. In the meantime, though, on our website, our assistant city manager has actually recorded the entire presentation. So it's about 15 or 20 minutes long. It's very well done. It's, I think, very easy to understand. So in the interim, because we don't know if you guys are going to be meeting again in June or when you'll be coming back together. So if you could kind of as an assignment, if I can give you an assignment, to go onto our website, and I'll send this out to you as an email so that you have the direct link to it. But if you could watch that presentation, give us some feedback from a community member's perspective. If you have questions, if things are unclear, we're constantly trying to tweak these materials. There's quite a bit of information on the website about our responsible spending plan and what measures have been taken already by the city to address these structural deficits that we have. So if I could leave it at that, I just want to make sure that you guys are kind of very aware of the environment that we're facing. And, you know, we certainly acknowledge that the timing of this is less than ideal because of what's been happening with the pandemic. But it's a reality that we face, and we have to march forward with that. So we welcome your feedback. We will continue to educate you about where we're at in that process. And staff will be returning to the council in, Zach, I'm looking at you, July.
Yes, July 8th, they'll present the actual findings, and then July 15th, they'll vote on whether or not to put it on the ballot.
Right. So those are some pretty important upcoming council meeting dates to get on your radar as well. And then obviously November 3rd is the election, at which time voters would decide if they would approve or reject this revenue measure. So more on that to come.
Thank you.
And Ron, before you go ahead and vote on anything, I just want to let you know you did receive one public comment regarding this item, if you'd like me to read it into the record.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So it's from David Shearer, and he says, I would like to encourage the reopening of the library for checking out and returning books and materials. I'm not encouraging reopening for reading, sitting, staying within the library, just the movement of materials. Perhaps we could reserve the books ahead on the library website and pick them up on the reserve shelf, or have them handed to us. Mainly, I need more books to read while I remain in confinement. If a limited number of people could be admitted to browse for materials, that would be great, but I understand the need for distancing. Thank you. And that's all the comments for this item.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like the plan already covers what he asked for.
Yep.
One of my big concerns, Dara, is when we get to the point where we're accepting people back. As I look at the details in phase 1 about when you would reopen the library, I want to do everything we can to keep our staff from having to be hall monitors. And so if it requires removing a chair instead of putting a sign down to keep from having the staff having to become confrontational with people, I would rather just remove the chair. And that's just an example. But I want to do everything I can to keep, because people are a little irritable sometimes already due to this pandemic. And so I want to do everything we can in this, and it looks like you've thought of that. But to keep this from being a confrontational thing between staff and patrons. And so as you look at that, and it looks good, as you look at that, that's just my request.
That's something we are trying to take into consideration. We're going to try and cover our bases, but we're also still, of course, waiting to see what the state, county, and city recommend as far as whether or not our aisles will be browsable, things like that. We just don't know the answers to yet. I have talked to Joanna, and one piece of that will definitely be having the rangers, back and helping us with either door counts or admittance if we actually have to do something like that. I think, like anything, it's going to be a rough, bumpy couple first weeks because we have to retrain all of our patrons. But once we know what all of the criteria are and can retrain them, and we get past that original, get that boulder moving, I guess, I think we'll be good, and we will have the rangers back at that point.
Right, and just to clarify, so the rangers are still patrolling. They're at half staffing, not half staff. They're at half their hours right now. So LS&S is still paying for the rangers to patrol the library campus because staff are still on site in the building, and because we want to maintain the security of the campus even during this time. But yes, as Dara said, that's part of this conversation and the flexibility that you've now afforded us to be able to reallocate those ranger times, to be able to serve more in that kind of greeter sort of role. And one of the things that we outlined in this draft reopening plan is dialogue and discussion around a metering type of system and updating the library's code of conduct to reflect that. So we've had some conversations with, other EOC city staff about some sort of temperature checking procedure. So people would be metered, they would have their temperature taken, there would be a verbal acknowledgement, like a script that the ranger or library staff would essentially say, welcome to the library. Because of the COVID situation, we are limiting, service time to 2 hours or whatever we determine that reasonable amount of time is. Do you please verbally acknowledge that you understand this? And then they would go off and do their business. So it would be more of a transactional kind of thing. They can still use the computers because that's kind of an essential service for a lot of people, but it would not be programming in person. It would not be sort of, not loitering, that's not the right word, but just the normal kind of relaxing and hanging out at the library for hours at a time. That's not going to probably be what phase 3 looks like for us. So those are definitely things that we have to continue to work through and figure out. And again, if the timing is such that, we can bring that back to you for your feedback, we certainly will. But thank you again for kind of allowing us the flexibility to adapt on the fly if, we want to make these changes and get things rolled out in between one of your meetings.
And when we get to that point, I think it will give our patrons confidence if we're doing things like metering and temperature checks. At least I went in a store the other day where they put this thing on my forehead. That gave me confidence. I was happy to do that. And so I think those things we need to do not only to protect ourselves, but also to give our patrons some confidence that we're really on top of this thing. Any other suggestions? Okay, our next item is the library director's report.
Okay, I think we've kind of gone over a lot of it. We closed March 16th, and our staff was really accommodating and quickly changed all of our programs over to a virtual format. We only left 2 programs behind, actually. A escape room, because that one had been planned and had to be redone for a virtual format, and the other one was a poetry slam. We had to take that one away just because we wouldn't be able to monitor what people were saying, so there was that piece of that. So other than that, we've had great success with online. The attendance and the views have been very high. Let's see, our second Saturday concert series had 819 views in March and 2,000 in April. The
Wow.
Writers Club continues to meet, and they have enjoyed, they've carried on as normal. It's been really impressive to watch them all learn Zoom and get up to date on new formats while still having their, because it's a 4-hour meeting often, the Writers Club, because they share their new works, so that's been successful as well. People have enjoyed the book club. In fact, a couple of those book clubs, the Recon Literario bilingual book club, has actually added 3 members during quarantine, so that's exciting. So we're continuing to move on. Our social media team has been very good at promoting not only our services, but sharing a lot of community information. We've been networking with other, the schools, and there's a group called Magic, which is a cultural group. We've been taking over each other's Instagram on occasion, so we can kind of increase our users and our viewership. So that's been really successful. We've given the San Diego Children's Museum access to stream on Facebook some of the story times. All of our story times have continued: baby lap time, toddler time, and preschool. And we've still had teen reading contests where they win books, and we've sent the prizes out. Our spring reading challenge started April 10th. No, that's not correct. May 10th, I'm sorry. And it's been a big success so far. We have 182 people that have been part of that. 72 of them are adults, which is really great. Unusual to get that many adults. It's usually a lower number. So we're very happy to say that we feel like we're still connecting with the community despite being closed. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we received a grant for $5,000. It was a California statewide library grant that we applied for e-materials, and we're using that to pay our part of our hoopla costs. And lastly, this is a new addition to the report you were able to read in advance. We are working on a printing project. It's been in process for a little while, but it is now coming to fruition. We'll be updating our 20-year-old library printing system. You'll now be able to print from your smartphone or your own device and pay. Let's see, what else can you do? Pay online. I'm going to have Katie talk because she knows all the fancy details of the printing system.
So the new public printing is really awesome, and it integrates with both Polaris and with our credit card system. So people will be able to, we'll have about 4 printers in the library, so people can send anything to the printers, and then they can retrieve it from any of those 4 printers in the library. It'll also be a double-sided copier, scanner. They'll be able to email things to themselves directly from the device, as well as save it to a USB, so they won't necessarily have to use one of our flatbed scanners, and it'll do double-sided, which is really great. People will be able to print from their phone, tablet, or laptop. It's great for our visitors because people oftentimes come to use our Wi-Fi. They won't have a card and they can't print without hardwired, so they can just create kind of a guest printing account, so they can just use their laptop and print something out. They'll also be able to use credit in addition to cash to pay for things. Part of this project also includes the ability for patrons to be able to pay their fines and fees online via the Polaris Catalogue, which is excellent. So they can use a credit card to pay their fines or fees online directly through our catalog. It's already an interface that is supported. What else? We're going to be able to accept credit cards now at the customer service desk in addition to the self-checks, which is great. We've been wanting to do that for a while. And Apple Pay, yeah. So the new credit card machines will do, I think, the Apple and Google Pay methods. We're looking into the cost on those devices. So that's something we definitely want to offer, the touchless or the contactless payment. The other cool thing, too, is if you have a home computer and you don't have a printer, you can send your print job from your home to the library via this thing. You go in with your card and you just print out whatever you were working on at home, which is really cool. So, and the print job will stay in the queue for 24 hours. So that's pretty much the gist of it, but we'll have more details as we kind of get underway with getting everything installed.
Do we know when we anticipate being complete with that project?
I heard it would take 4 to 5 months. So we're just finalizing the contract terms right now. And I want to emphasize, so this is a city capital improvement program budget that's funding this. But our information systems staff worked very closely with Katie and Dara and Greg Vogt from Library Systems and Services, their tech staff, to go through the RFP process, really determine what the best options were out there, what kind of system that we needed. And the outcome was that we got the best, most comprehensive modern service at the greatest price by partnering with LS&S because of their buying power. So it's just another example, another reflection of the benefit that we get from this partnership, because LS&S has, you know, purchasing power that we as a standalone don't have. And so I just wanted to kind of reiterate that. So we're working with LS&S to finalize those. It'll just be like a pass-through type of agreement. And then we will get that finalized. We'll get the information or the technologies procured. We are approaching the end of our fiscal year, so there are some deadlines there with how long we can continue to spend funding. So it'll likely take a little dip in progress until the beginning of the next fiscal year in July, but then it'll roll out hopefully pretty quickly after that.
And 4 to 5 months from now, everyone's very hopeful that all of this will be over. But if it's not, would that be part of like the curbside services if I needed, say, to print? Yeah? Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, because then you could send it from home. You could sit in the parking lot, use our Wi-Fi on your device and send it in. We could print it for you. You could pay for it theoretically on the internet using your credit card, and we could just bring it out to you with your materials.
And sorry, when you said that sitting in the parking lot kind of just triggered something for me. Is making the Wi-Fi accessible to the parking lot on the phased approach at all?
We just
reinstated it.
Oh, great. Okay, wonderful.
Usable now.
Okay, thank you.
Dara, I have some questions about staffing. What have you had to do with the hours cutback? How have you done that? Have we laid off anybody? Have we furloughed people, or have we cut hours, or what have we done?
Well, the city cut the contract,
I saw the MOU.
and then luckily LS&S was able to get part of the federal CARES grant for the rest of the employees' salaries. So we were very fortunate to not have to furlough anyone. So we have been working on a variety of projects in the building. It was wonderful to do inventory when there was nobody there. It was a great time to get caught up on some back burner projects. But we still have had to use administrative leave for some of those folks because of just having the spacing in the building. We can't have everyone there at the same time working at the stations where they need to be. So we've been sort of creative in the scheduling. Actually, Joanna visited us today, and while it was nice to see people, you see about half of the people that would normally be there, maybe even a little less, depending on what day it is and what the schedule is, and what the projects are and how we can spread the people throughout the building.
Are any of them working from home?
Where we can, we have a couple people that, for health reasons, work from home right now, and we have done kind of a mix of working from home and then coming into the building. So yeah, we're doing a little bit of everything, it seems.
Well, good. I'm really happy to hear that our staff hasn't been decimated. That's great. That's good news. Thank you. Anybody else have questions for Dara? Okay.
No questions, just a comment. It sounds like that Dara, that you've done a great job of reacting to this mess and doing a really good job of planning ahead with what we're faced with. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Okay, it's been moved by Clemens, second by Gork to adjourn. All those in favor say yes.
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 Okay, John, thanks for being with us.
Oh, and I'm glad for the opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Okay, good luck with those twins.
Thank you.